Mexico. It's a land that people fall in love with. Shaped like a vast horn between two warm seas, Mexico is fully a third the size of the United States. Human beings have inhabited this land for 30,000 years, and the oldest civilizations in North America sprang from here. Historically, there are three Mexicos: the Mexico of pre-Columbian civilizations, the bedrock culture of the Olmecs, which goes back 4,000 years, the Tutonacs of Veracruz, the Mayas in steaming Yucatan, the Zapotecs and Mixtecs of Monte Alban, the warlike Toltecs of Tula, the imperial Aztecs who forged their empire from what is now Mexico City. These were great civilizations that prevailed in Mexico until Hernán Cortés crushed the Aztec Empire with only a few hundred men, bringing Mexico under the crown and scepter of the Spanish monarchy. Historically, this is the colonial period of the Spanish conquerors. Mexico's history for close to 500 years has been the struggle to fuse these two great cultures, the Spanish and the Indian. The Mexico of fierce independence began in 1810 with the cry of a village priest named Hidalgo. It was followed by wars and revolutions, heroes and brigands, Juarez, Diaz, Zapata, and Pancho Villa. Mexico is more than a country. It's a whole world of conflicting histories and cultures spread over a landscape of dazzling contrasts. Primeval Baja, glittering Acapulco, and stylish Puerto Vallarta, elegant Guadalajara, and the capital, Mexico City, the ruins of Teotihuacan, the Silver City, Tasco, Oaxaca's Monte Alban, classic Uxmal, the grandeur of Chichen Itza, and dazzling Cancun. For almost 300 years, Royal Spain had ruled Mexico as conquerors. Then on the morning of September 16th, 1810, a priest named Miguel Hidalgo summoned his village by tolling the church bell. He spoke on the need to revolt, ending with the cry, "Viva Mexico! Long live Mexico!" Under the banner of Guadalupe, that cry sparked Mexico's War of Independence against the mother country. The first city to fall to the revolution was Guadalajara, a city of legend and song. Once it was called the biggest small town in Mexico. Today, it's the Republic's second largest city, bustling and cosmopolitan, a favorite with visitors. The gracious Degollado Theater houses opera. Guadalajara is a fun town, 5,000 feet above sea level. The climate is clear, bracing. On the streets, horse-drawn carriages have the right of way. Plaza de la Liberación is just one of the city's lovely parks and plazas. It's with fierce pride that Guadalajarans refer to themselves as tapatíos, after a tasseled cape once worn by Spanish gentlemen. They're a special breed, the tapatíos, brimming with a vigor drawn from their eternal springtime climate. There's plenty of big city energy here, but it's mellowed by a gracious lifestyle that's traceable to the colonial past. Some say Guadalajara is more Spanish than Spain, but it is thoroughbred Mexico through and through. 150 miles east of Guadalajara, snuggled between the ocean and lush mountain jungle, lies romantic Puerto Vallarta. Here, the jungle is a happy home for the spiny dewlapped lizard, the iguana. People here eat them, but the iguana sparks a special memory for a generation of moviegoers. Before the 1960s, Puerto Vallarta had been a rather sleepy little fishing town on the shores of Banderas Bay. There were no paved roads to Vallarta then. Accommodations for visitors were hard to come by. Then, in 1963, Hollywood director John Huston chose nearby Miss Maloya for the location filming of The Night of the Iguana, a major motion picture. Visitors still come here and tour what remains of the sets. The film starred Richard Burton. At that time, Burton and Elizabeth Taylor were the most glamorous couple in the world. The Burtons decided to build a house here, 2 houses, as a matter of fact, a his and a hers. The boom was on. With 24 miles of beaches, Vallarta suddenly emerged as a developer's dream. It was the beginning of Gringo Gulch. The former fishing village became accessible by cruise ship, highway, and direct flight jets. The remarkable fact is that despite its popularity, Puerto Vallarta still retains the easy charm of small-town Mexico. Most shops still close for siesta, and in some places, the morning milk is still delivered by burro. Yet, Vallarta has style. How could it be otherwise in a place whose modern history began with the making of a movie? From Puerto Vallarta, a visitor can ferry across the Sea of Cortez to the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula and the free port of Cabo San Lucas. Baja. A stunningly beautiful wilderness of mountains, desert, and sea, shoaling at islands of volcanic rock. In centuries past, British pirates used to ambush from these waters, preying on the galleons of New Spain en route from Manila to Acapulco with cargoes of silk and spices. Before the Cape was open to tourism, it was a haunt of novelists who valued its isolation. John Steinbeck was one, and Earl Stanley Gardner. Zane Grey, who was quite an outdoorsman, was a frequent visitor. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote a good deal of Treasure Island in Baja. Most of the sports here are waterborne. Sailing and fishing. They call this Marlin Alley, so there's always the possibility of making a record-breaking catch. But reeling in the big ones isn't everybody's idea of the ultimate. The primeval setting encourages underwater exploring and fishing for treasures from the ocean floor. Baja's real landlord is the wildlife that lives here in abundance. There are seafowl everywhere. Rookeries of pelicans and cormorants. Lime-frosted islands of gulls. When they call "the whales are in," it bolts through Baja like an electric charge. Each year, thousands of gray whales, the best loved of all the world's whales, gather in Baja's sheltering lagoons for courting, mating, and to give birth to new calves that issued from last year's frolic in Baja. Thanks to internationally shared insights into the importance of these great sea mammals to our nurturing oceans, the gray whales, which had been close to extinction, are now on a healthy increase. The Mexican Republic, by the way, is a leader in the creation of whale sanctuaries. Encrusted with barnacles, they sometimes appreciate a relieving massage. Each March to May, they sojourn here and then leave gracefully and in peace. Cradled by two mountain ranges, the Sierra Madres of the east and the western Sierra Madres, the Valley of Mexico is the mother from which this nation sprang. Rising over the valley is Mount Popocatépetl, Popo, gleaming in its shadow, a jewel-like church atop an ancient Indian pyramid. About 30 miles from Mexico City stands the ruins of what must have been one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Teotihuacan, the city of the gods. It was built 1,500 years ago without wheeled vehicles or beasts of burden. The Pyramid of the Sun, an awe-inspiring example of the art and engineering of ancient America. They were a peaceful people. There's no trace of war or weapons in the wall paintings that they've left. The Pyramid of the Moon. At one time, it was crowned by a temple to the moon goddess. On this temple, the god Quetzalcoatl is revealed as a feathered serpent, a union of sky and earth. To understand the swift conquest of Mexico by Spaniards, it helps to be familiar with the legend. Quetzalcoatl was a god-king who was fair-skinned and wore a beard. Evil powers drove him from his throne to the eastern sea, but Quetzalcoatl would return. A 1,000 years ago, Tula, just 45 miles from Mexico City, had been the nerve center of the Toltec Empire that ruled much of Mexico. These 15-foot basalt pillars had once supported a temple of the morning star. It had been a grand city of warriors and dauntless rulers. Now it's stripped of its splendor. The Toltecs practiced human sacrifice, and some believed that this image, called Chocmul, was a receptacle for the still throbbing hearts of the victims. A tribe of despised nomads came this way, half-starved, exhausted. But they called themselves the people of the sun and were convinced that it was their destiny to conquer. In the marshes of Lake Texcoco, They beheld the prophetic sign, an eagle on a cactus with a serpent in its beak. This was the place. They settled on an island in the lake, defensible on all sides against their enemies. They cut canals and built causeways. Stone by stone, they began building their capital, which they called Tenochtitlan. It became the Mexico City of today. They grew food on man-made islands of roots and reeds, called chinampas. And they grew flowers, which they loved, dahlias and cosmos, zinnias and marigolds. You can boat through these floating gardens today at Xochimilco, just outside the city. Today, they're much as they were in Aztec times. On a fragrant Sunday afternoon, Mexican parents might tell their children how their ancestors who grew food here became so strong they conquered all others. With conquest and with the tribute they demanded, gold and precious stones, brilliant feathers and skins of jaguars, they forged the greatest empire ever known in North America. In the spring of 1519, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma opened the gates of Tenochtitlan to invading Spaniards. The Spaniards were astounded. It was the most beautiful city they had ever seen. This scale model of Tenochtitlan is displayed at the Museum of Mexico City. Emperor Moctezuma was certain that the dynamic Hernan Cortés, fair-skinned and bearded, who had come from across the eastern sea, was the god Quetzalcoatl returning to claim his kingdom. The population of Tenochtitlan was 300,000, and Cortés had only a few hundred soldiers. Yet he took the city. It was a conquest unparalleled in history. The old Aztec Empire became New Spain. "7,000 feet above sea level, crackling with urban energy, it's one of the largest cities in the world. The nation didn't found it founded the nation. Outsiders may call it Mexico City, but Mexicans do not. To them, it's simply Mexico. Mexico. They refer to the nation as the Republic. The Zocalo, or Great Square, had been the site of an Aztec pyramid. Now the city's metropolitan cathedral, built in part with that pyramid's stones, is the focal point. But nearby, the foundations of an old Aztec ceremonial center can still be seen. The Alameda is the downtown park in the old quarter of the city. Here people stroll, read newspapers, and sometimes listen to the street musicians. It had been a marketplace for the Aztecs. Also downtown is the Palace of Fine Arts. Home of the famed Ballet Folklorico. This was once a palace too, its entire facade faced with blue and white tiles. Now it's a restaurant. Tiles are used in the monumental mosaic frescoes of Juan O'Gorman. This is the campus beacon of the University of Mexico. This city offers never-ending delights for art lovers, from street murals to breathtaking works by Rivera, Orozco, and Siqueiros. Handicrafts from every state in the Republic travel to the capital, testaments to the artistic drive of the Mexican people. Many Mexicans regard the corrida, Spanish bullfighting, as an art too. Sunday afternoons are reserved for Plaza Mexico, the world's largest bull ring. Even youngsters practice the passes of the matadors they idolize. To Mexicans, it isn't a sport, it's an artistic exhibition. A massive killer bull gracefully vanquished by a lone human being. It's a ritual that strikes deeply into the Mexican heart. Carrying 10 lanes of traffic, the Paseo de la Reforma is the city's grand boulevard. Fringing it is the Zona Rosa, a chic area of boutiques and bistros, hawkers and gawkers. It's night with dining, dancing, and floor shows that pinks the Zona Rosa to full color. A golden angel, El Ángel, is guardian of this traffic turnabout on the Reforma. The boulevard leads to Bosques de Chapultepec, Chapultepec Park. From the heights of Chapultepec Castle, where the ill-fated Emperor Maximilian and Empress Carlotta once resided, there's a bird's-eye view of the park. A 1,000-acre retreat from the workaday city. For kids, it's a vast playground. An outdoor theater for others. For lovers, it's a trysting place. There are fields for sports and lakes for boating. The park has its own kind of bustle. The park's Museum of Anthropology is one of the world's greatest museums of its kind. Here, visitors move through the accomplishments of all the Mexican cultures before Columbus. The Aztec Stone of the Sun. It was unearthed in the Zocalo in 1790 and weighs 24 tons. Though sometimes called a calendar, it was more than that to the Aztecs. It was their perception of the universe they lived in. In the Plaza of Three Cultures, a visitor is confronted by history in layers. Here is the base of a pre-Columbian Aztec pillar. A few steps away, a church that the Spanish had built in 1609. And there, a skyscraper. This plaza is a perfect symbol of today's Mexican, whose roots spread to the soil of Spain and even more deeply into the earth of his Indian ancestors. They're proud of this blood, proud of their Aztec heritage, and they celebrate it. It took more than the harsh Spanish occupation to mold into one people Mexico's conflicting tribes and cultures, some of which had enslaved each other and sacrificed each other to their gods. North of the capital is a place of pilgrimage known the world over, the Shrine of Guadalupe. It's what happened here that kindled the first spark of Mexican patriotism. Many of the devout approach the shrine on their knees, some with infants in their arms. This excess of devotion is startling to some visitors. It may seem too much. It must be remembered that the conquering Spaniards saw the Indian as being hardly human. Despite fervent opposition by some of the friars, soldiers and landowners dealt brutally with the Indians. Then in the year 1531, 10 years after the fall of the Aztecs, a series of visions was reported to have been seen on a nearby hill. They involved a humble Indian named Juan Diego, a recent convert to Christianity. It happened during a chilly December. Juan Diego carried an urgent message to the Spanish Bishop of Mexico. A lady, radiant as the sun, spoke to him in the Aztec language, saying that a shrine should be built in her honor. The bishop doubted him. If she's real, tell her to make roses bloom out of season. Again, the lady showed herself. And Juan Diego discovered roses in full bloom, which he tucked into the folds of his cape. When he opened his cape, the image of the lady glowed from its fabric. News of the Guadalupe Madonna astounded both Spanish and Indians. A shrine was built on top of the hill. This basilica was begun just 2 years later, in 1533. This contemporary church, with space for over 10,000 pilgrims, houses the image, now over 4.5 centuries old. Today, there are Mexicans who accept the Guadalupe story literally, and those who do not. But the Spanish conquerors did accept it, which brought about a miracle of another kind. Now they must answer to heaven for their earthly treatment of the conquered. For the Indian, the conqueror's heaven had shown itself with an Indian face and had spoken in an Indian tongue. And fallen empires of Indians felt themselves to be one people. Halfway between Mexico City and the luxurious Pacific resort of Acapulco, sparkling like a silver nugget from the heights of the Sierra Madre, is Tasco. Here, Cortés struck silver. By 1529, the boom was on, and silver is still a principal natural resource. As the miners dug for the precious metal, the city rose. This is the Mexico of royal Spain, untarnished by centuries of change, and now protected as a national monument. Storybook Mexico. Pan-tile roofs. Flowers everywhere. Winding streets of cobblestone. Almost every street weaves a way to the Tasco Zocalo, magnificently landmarked by the 18th century church of Santa Prisca. There's a sprawl of outdoor markets near the church, where everything from ponchos to produce is sold. And being Tasco, treasured items of silver. From Tasco, it's one long slope to the Pacific, and Mexico's premier resort, Acapulco. The Aztecs were sun worshippers. They called themselves the people of the sun. And there's sunshine aplenty over the golden sands of Acapulco. It began as a port where Spanish galleons embarked for the Orient with cargoes of Mexican silver. Now it's cargoes of eager tourists. Today, Acapulco is the queen city of the Mexican Riviera. The Aztecs worshipped the sun with ritual sacrifice. Now it's done with catamarans and a firm determination to master the sea. Or by just accepting the sunshine as a warm smile from the sky. When sun worshipping gets too fervent, it just takes diving in. From the cliffs of La Quebrada, these celebrated divers plunged more than 140 feet into a tight, rocky crevice. If a diver mistimes, it's certain death. They become a wafting trademark worldwide for Acapulco. Acapulco has glamour. Each year, over 2 million visitors grace its beaches and repose in its palaces of pleasure. The day winds down to the quiet luxury of a Pacific sunset. But nightfall fails to find all the sun worshippers resting for tomorrow's sun and sea rituals. Backsliders sneak off to the covens of Acapulco's nightlife, switching from sunshine to a neon haze. Although Oaxaca is only 100 miles east of Acapulco, it's light years away in lifestyles. 1,000 feet above the Oaxaca Valley rise the ruins of a sacred city where epochs of Indian civilization had flourished. Monte Alban. 800 years before Christ, it had been a place of temples and ceremonies. Only priests dwelt here, between the sky and the earth, gods and men. They grew no food up here. Even drinking water was hauled up and stored. Monte Alban yields the relics of more than one civilization. It is a depository of epochs. Here the Zapotec culture reached its golden age. And here, the mysteries of Monte Alban, strange carvings from Mexico's earliest civilization, the Olmec. They are called the danzantes, dancers. Scholars are still baffled as to their meaning. The mountainside is pockmarked with ancient graves. One of them, Tomb 7, yielded a trove of priceless treasure, much of it pure gold, now heavily guarded in the Regional Museum of Oaxaca. Benito Juarez, a full-blooded Zapotec Indian, was born in Oaxaca. He became the Republic's greatest president. Juarez fought stubbornly against European powers that had seated a puppet emperor on a throne at Chapultepec Palace and sought to rule Mexico from the Old World. Juarez won. The emperor died by firing squad. The man who succeeded Juarez undid his work. Porfirio Diaz, also from Oaxaca, forged an ironclad dictatorship. But the long-lived dictator did not go unresisted. Between 1893 and 1918, idealists and opportunists, brigands and heroes were galloping across the pages of Mexico's history, imprinting them with gunshot, bloodshed, and reform. Cárdenas, Huerta. One such was Dorteo Aranjo, a volatile mixture of Robin Hood and bandito, who was known on both sides of the U.S.-Mexican border as Pancho Villa. He was a brilliant horseman, marksman, and general. This is Emiliano Zapata, an Indian from Morelos who spoke little but acted swiftly. Zapata led an army of underdogs in a fight for enough corn for tortillas and sufficient land to grow it in. Zapata is a genuine folk hero to the Mexican people. Sharing a border with Guatemala, the Mexican state of Chiapas is clad in velvet green jungle and shimmering lagoons. "26 miles long, with a depth of 600 feet, Sumidero Canyon is spectacular. And the falls of Agua Azul are recklessly playful. Mayan ruins vie with rainforests for the sun. These are the precincts of the Locondecas, the 300 or so remaining Lacandan Indians who cling to the starkly primitive. They weave no blankets, these Indians. Their beds are hand-woven hammocks. Their faces, living replicas of Mayan sculpture. Their only hunting tools are the bow and arrow. And their gods, the gods of the Mayas, worshipped as though the incense had never stopped burning. It's evident to the eye that the early builders of San Cristobal de las Casas were missionaries from Spain. But the town is stalwartly Indian, and the market is where the Indians gather. Sinacanteco men wear ribbons hanging from their hats, tied for husbands, loose for bachelors. It's a long sweep to the northeast and the Gulf states of Veracruz, Tabasco, and Campeche. 5 miles from Papantla, a town fragrant with the scent of vanilla, stand the mossy ruins of Tajín, a city sacred to the Totonac civilization, which reached its peak some 1,200 years ago. This pyramid is mortised with 365 niches, which held the image of a god for each day of the year. These were the great Totonacs. And these are the Totonacs today. Every Holy Week, they perform the volador dance, circling like birds above the church square in Pampantla. But it's a ritual that began in the pagan plaza of Tajín. South of the jungle Veracruz spreads the Gulf state of Tabasco. Offshore are drilling rigs, turning petroleum into pesos. But a short chopper hop inland at the La Venta swamps, are vestiges of the mother culture of ancient Mexico, the Olmec. Their civilization began 4,000 years ago. These basalt heads are 6 to 11 feet high and some weigh over 20 tons. To better preserve them, they've been moved 60 miles inland to a park at Villahermosa, the state capital. The move was a respectful one, for on this site had stood the first sacred city of the Olmecs. The fascinating old seaport of Campeche. Best known for its seafood and its seawall, on which stout Spanish forts were built in the 16th century against pirates and buccaneers. The Mayan museum pieces housed in one of the forts are deaf to the cannon's roar. Sweeping out into the Caribbean is the Yucatan Peninsula and the ruins of the sacred city of the Mayas. It's as though from a steaming tropical tangle, ancient Greece had risen. Uxmal, a classic city. The Mayas were the first temple builders in the Americas, and some feel that Uxmal was their supreme achievement. The Spanish named this the nunnery because it resembles a convent with a cloister. For simplicity and harmony, some say that these ruins vie with those of ancient Greece at its zenith. The Pyramid of the Magician rises a steep 120 feet from an oval base. The Mayas believe that it was built in just one night by magic, hence its name. "50 miles from Uxmal is a city not nearly so ancient, but gleaming white, with friendly people who dance a wonderful dance called La Bamba. Mérida, the Yucatan capital. The spine of the city's economy had been henequen, sometimes called sisal, or hemp, used in the making of twine, rope, hammocks, table mats, and other woven items. Until the coming of synthetic fibers, much of the world's rope was made of henequen from this area. It is still the green gold of the Yucatan. 75 miles from Mérida stands the most visited of all Mayan ruins, Chichen Itza. The Chacmul, baffling and mysterious, lies in a timeless gaze over the ruins of a great city of the Mayas. The great temple, called the Castillo in Spanish, built for the Toltec god Quetzalcoatl, whom the Mayas called Kukulkan. There are the same number of steps from the base of the pyramid to the temple on top as there are days in the year. Inside, a jaguar-shaped altar. This is an observatory. The Mayas were excellent astronomers. The Temple of the Warriors was probably a place of human sacrifice. This is the area of 1,000 pillars. The Temple of the Jaguars overlooks a broad ball court where competing teams played, passing a heavy ball through stone rings, something like basketball. The fans bet heavily, with stakes ranging from jewelry to slaves. For the players, the stakes were even higher: death to the losers. The most curious sight is the cenote, an underground waterhole 100 feet deep, sacred to the god Shak. Human beings were hurled into it as sacrifices, offerings to the god, for Shak was the god of rain. The remains of 13 men, 8 women, and 21 children have been dredged up. Today, young Mayas dive into the cenote just for the thrill. Beyond the Yucatan lies the state of Quintana Roo and the Caribbean. Here, the mating of sand and sea brought forth some of the most beautiful resort areas in the world. A spectrum of blue colors, the Sea of Akumal, where underwater explorers searched for the sunken wrecks of Spanish galleons. Xela is a natural aquarium in a labyrinth of lagoons sculptured with coral outcroppings. Snorkelers cavort like playmates with schools of fish. Perched proudly 40 feet above the sea is the Maya's gateway to the Caribbean, Tulum. This is the only city ever built by the Mayas on a seacoast, and it was the last to hold out against the Spanish conquerors. The island of Cozumel still bears her queenly title as Mexico's first international Caribbean resort. It's most popular with Mexicans and Europeans. It offers every luxury: gastronomic, athletic, to the soothing rhythms of the surf. If Cozumel is a mellow queen, then the princess of the Caribbean is Cancun, a burgeoning resort that geographically is closer to Miami than to Mexico City. Cancun has everything to make it the vacation magnet that it is. The warm Caribbean and miles of white sand beach. Mexico leads the world in the development of beach resorts. Not long ago, there was nothing here but a tiny fishing village. Cancun vibrates with sports. On the courts, on the greens, on the waves, and in the warm playgrounds of the sea. Yet it invites quiet repose, unwinding. To a visitor who's been touring Mexico, Cancun may offer a reminder. No matter how deeply one has dug into the strata of their histories or puzzled over their past, these are still the people of the sun. Each 16th of September, the Republic of Mexico celebrates its independence by the ringing of bells, as Padre Hidalgo had first rung the bell of liberty nearly 2 centuries ago. And the people cry out, "Viva Mexico!" in thunderous response. Viva Mexico! Viva Mexico! That cry rings out in pride and in joy. Often, when taking leave of this land, the visitor is thinking fondly, "Viva Mexico."